Welcome in to Players League once more. My name is Bearlight, joined by Mr. Monkey Man, as we, of course, bring you action from the Players League. But this time, it'll be from the classroom. Monkey Man, how are you doing?
You know what? I left school, I think, hold on, how old am I? 18 years ago. I am now twice as old as all the seniors that are graduating this year. And yet, I'm still excited to continue to learn because that's exactly what this has been all about. Bear, I'm excited. It's a great Friday. That means tomorrow is the beginning of my daughter's, spring break?
Ooh.
Which means that there's going to be a lot of dangerous things around the house that I'm going to have to pick up. But I'm not going to be picking up anything except good vibes because this stream is going to be fun time.
We always do at the Players League, presented by Brightspeed Internet, of course, the innovative program connecting gaming, STEM education, and real-world career opportunities. You know what, Monkey Man? They've heard it enough from us. Why not hear it from the NFL players and influencers that are representing Players League? That's right, we got a special message from those incredible supporters, so check out this quick video.
Welcome to the Players League, presented by Brightspeed Fiber Internet, an innovative program connecting gaming, STEM, education, and real-world career opportunities.
Our mission is clear: empower students through competition, mentorship, and hands-on learning experiences to shape the leaders of tomorrow.
The Players League combines esports with an extensive STEM curriculum focused on content creation. Across 10 lessons, students master essential skills like storyboarding, filming, and video editing, culminating in the creation of compelling business advertisements.
These experiences open pathways to careers in marketing, entertainment, technology, broadcasting, and beyond.
Competition fuels engagement and growth. Students compete regionally in an exciting Madden 25 tournament, showcasing their strategic thinking and gaming prowess. But the impact extends far beyond gameplay. As for our program activity, connect students with industry experts who offer real-world insights into dynamic career possibilities.
Heard when we first joined that there would be NFL players, but I wasn't really expecting like big name NFL players to be here. So it was really cool seeing Jonathan Stewart and the wide receiver that helped get my team to the Super Bowl.
From Houston and the Carolinas to Green Bay and New England, Player League spans communities, building foundational skills for thriving careers in marketing, entertainment, and communications.
Uniquely, students benefit from the mentorship by the former NFL players who provide inspirational credibility and practical advice drawn from their elite athletic experiences.
This program's pinnacle is a live, in-person championships during the NFL Draft in Green Bay, where top schools from each region compete for both STEM and Madden titles. Programs like the Players League matter because they bridge passion and opportunity, empowering students through transformative education and mentorship.
Join the Players League.
Compete,
Create, and discover your future.
Jonathan Stewart, Brenton Burson, the two Panthers that I grew up watching, part of this experience. I can imagine, only imagine that if I was in that call, Monkey Man, being able to hear from some of the best that I followed, I would be nothing short of just absolutely amazed and incredibly excited for what they had to say.
Really awesome. I mean, even when you think about like anyone coming in from the NFL, he's like, all right, I thought, maybe some small names. I think anyone that comes out of the NFL ends up being kind of big name, but it's huge that, especially like you just mentioned, the recognizability and knowing there is that credibility to all of the work that you're going to be doing, not just from the faculty, the staff administration, but as well as everything reaching that pinnacle point to be able to really showcase and strut your stuff at the NFL draft. That's actually really cool, and I love that all these kids have been taking this so seriously to the very end.
Well, like we mentioned, this is a special broadcast of the Players League. Typically, when me and Monkey Man are here on the broadcast, you're like, there's some Madden a little bit later on, right? Well, this time around, we've got STEM, even more impactful for the future of these students, and that's what I love about it. And, of course, presented by Brightspeed Fiber Internet, this features a full program recap, and plus, you'll get the rough draft videos we'll see here in person and see the rubrics graded as far as the director of ed, which we'll get to in a little bit as well, and see and reflect on those to see who's going to make it to Green Bay in later this month. Holy cow, it's coming up. It's in a couple weeks, Monkey.
It's literally in 2 weeks, maybe an extra day, just for travel time, be able to get all these students walk in the right direction. This is going to be really awesome. If you were not here from our previous STEM showcase for the Players League, then you missed out. But you can check it out on the VOD for all this, all the channel and all this, the work that has been here for Stay Plugged In. It was a very enlightening motion and also a great step of what we're doing tonight. It is a special edition of all the STEM that has been coming to a head. We get to see not just the ideas of what they were coming up with there, Bear, but now them going in full motion. Those videos are going to be spicy coming up.
It's insanely awesome to see what they've put together already with the storyboards, and then we're going to get in the rough drafts where it might even get a little bit more special as those things come to life, and all of this made possible by Brightspeed. So we want to take a moment and recognize Brightspeed Fiber Internet. Your incredible support has been amazing. Your commitment to empowering the next generation of storytellers, creators, innovators, all at the heart of programs like Players League, helping students across the country gain real-world experience and career-ready skills like we've seen live on this broadcast so many times before. And just like they're shaping the future in the classroom, Brightspeed delivers that same high-performance experience at home. New Brightspeed Fiber Internet is here. It's the ultra-fast internet you've been waiting for. Know that everyone in your house can now stream, game, and do more all at the same time. Brightspeed technicians ensure your fiber internet works all over your house, so you can too. No more searching for that one spot in the house to take your video call. Don't settle for slow and unreliable speed anymore. Switch to Brightspeed today at go.staypluggedin.gg/BrightspeedApril. That is go.staypluggedin.gg/BrightspeedApril. Limited availability in selected areas, but make sure that you type !Brightspeed. That's got the link TLDR. So that way you can get some good internet, and you don't have to worry about lagging out of those games that are ever so important.
I worked with a few producers here in the last few months that have been running some stuff up here in the Northeast over towards that Pennsylvania area, and they've been enjoying some Brightspeed. So definitely have some assurance that they can be able to put our faces in your spaces, and the same thing for all the gigs that they also worked into as well. So make sure to check out Brightspeed. Just everything that Bear said. Don't wait. Just keep going. Find it.
Special introduction announcing the Director of Education. We've got Justin Ellis with us back here to grade some of these rough draft videos. Justin, how you feeling?
I'm feeling great. Today's a big day. You know, when you start things like this, you always know you're going to get to the conclusion eventually. But to be sitting here and with the commercials and rough drafts that we're going to see today, I'm pretty thrilled about what you guys are going to get a chance to look at.
No better feeling than it. Just as a review here, obviously you joined the Stay Plugged In team. It's a while ago now at this point. You've been really building something special here, but your involvement in Stay Plugged In and Players League, give us the TLDR.
Yeah, so I'm the director of ed over here. So everything education involved nowadays, I usually have a bit of a hand in it at the very least. So whether that's building curriculum like content creation, which they've been doing as part of this league, whether that's working with AI, which we've been doing a lot with recently, working with aviation as well and hosting aviation events. I'm involved in that end, but also the teaching end. I come from a background in teaching. I taught in a variety of different roles for about 7 years. And being able to come from just most recently a higher ed position in collegiate esports and coaching to now being back here in education and working with K through 12 students again has been an absolute thrill, and it's been awesome getting to do all that work with Stay Plugged In.
That's fantastic. Monkey Man, obviously, you know, you've been around the collegiate scene for a while, so you know what it takes to be a director. Well, I guess like what it takes to put a team out there and really get them going to some degree.
You know, I've been thinking about the capacity that I've ever relieved my true day job, or maybe even just want to assist with kind of local college programs, maybe get in touch with some of those and maybe start kind of working in. What would you say is some of the most important stuff, Justin, that you, from the collegiate sphere kind of into that more grade school sphere all the way up from 1 to 12, what importance do you think that kind of brings downward into, you know, a lot of these to-be adults that you think is a very important step, or just information from that collegiate side of things to be able to help them just kind of guide themselves the right way?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot that kind of goes into that from a variety of different ways. I think you go from beginning when you're working with somebody in collegiate, it's a lot more of they know the basic skills, now it's just improving on those. And then when you're working with a K through 12, it's about teaching those skills. So when you get somebody in collegiate nowadays, basically the expectation is you're teaching them to execute and do real world situations. And I think what we're bringing with Stay Plugged In and Stay Plus to the K through 12 is a lot more based in being able to teach those collegiate level skills in a very basic executable way that allows them to think about workforce development, whether that's immediately going into college, whether that's going directly into workforce after high school, whether that's doing work in high school. I think we really do cover the full array of learning so that students get opportunities to really push themselves a bit further and get the real world experience that they can make a portfolio with.
And I've seen it in the Formula STEM Esports Cup, for example, as well. Also brought to you by Brightspeed Fiber Internet. It's you get to learn really how to acquire the job as well. So you're not only learning about the job, but it's like if I wanted to become an engineer in F1, or if I wanted to become an engineer for like a broadcast team for NFL, for example. How do we do that? And it's not, you go into the details, which is something I would love to have had as a high schooler. It's like, what should I study in college when I get to that level, right? Is that kind of the thought process behind these activations?
Yeah, 100%. The process really is to be able to do as much workforce experience as possible. Whether that's, getting the basic tools of being able to do the video editing and be able to go into the content creation, and whether that's going beyond as well. To basically be able just to build out skills and however possible, and also to show students what's out there. They talk to a bunch of different members of the community throughout this process. They get involved with a bunch of different skills, and each week they're learning about different jobs in the workforce and where they can possibly go with that. So I think that's a big part of this too.
There's definitely a huge reality check of knowing. It's like, okay, I want to be, say astronaut. You're like, all right, well, what can really kind of exist into that lane, and what can actually be there? But knowing that you're giving them a much more granular kind of philosophy and what can come from that collegiate and now into K through 12 kind of ideals, and it matches well, and it can be helped to match rather the speed at which maybe like home life into the schoolroom definitely can be able to adapt to. Because that's not the same for every student. Like, you get to college and everyone kind of separates from their original community, and then you get to kind of this, this more island of this next level of learning, and it feels like, all right, everyone's kind of at this pace here, and so the difficulty ends up being how you adapt that to each and every single student, which is really cool that you're able to do it with Stay Plugged In, especially for all the stuff like Stay Plus and Spin Labs, and be able to give them some extra tools along the way.
100%. 100%. I love that's my aspect of it too, and it's kind of funny because you like talk about I want to become like F1 and build those cars. It's like, well, it's not in their brain. It might be like, hey, well, it's not really rocket science, but like F1 cars are kind of like that, right? So it's like
rocket ship.
Well, how do I start, right? So how do I get into this? And that's a big way that Stay Plus can help, is not becoming, well, not specifically what everything you need to know in rocket science, but how do I get there in the first place? Where's a roadmap is what I was trying to get at. With Stay Plus is certainly a good way to sum it up. Plus, with the Spin Labs 2, Monkey Man, you've seen these before on the stream pretty consecutively. When you're learning some of these skills, obviously a great environment is a good place to do it.
You got to have the LEDs on your eyes. Look, at this point, I am taught and I have learned, if I do not have some kind of crazy design off to my side, am I even live in esports? No, I'm not. And that's exactly why you get to see all this awesome stuff with Spin Labs. I mean, Justin, have you seen these in person yourself? Be able to kind of really witness kind of the change up into like some of the students' experiences when they go to places that are kind of equipped to this capacity?
Yeah, so I've had some experiences seeing some of these labs in person. I've seen a ton of different labs as well, and I think it really just is getting ingrained in that environment ultimately, and feeling like you're actually part of a community. When I started in esports, it was very much a student-run initiative. You had to bring in your own consoles, you had to bring in your own computers to make these kinds of things happen. So now being able to have a kind of space where students can walk into, but also a space that adults can walk into, teachers can walk into, admin, people in the community can walk into. I think it shows credibility. It goes beyond just being a student at this point. It shows, yeah, they need coaches, they need teachers who are going to be involved. They really do need to have a space to push to the next level. And I think having these spaces to be able to do so is just an absolute boost to student self-esteem, to coach self-esteem. It shows that this is something that really matters, and that going back to workforce, there are real outcomes that students can get from this.
Yeah, you see the logos match as well, from like the mouse pad, for example, to the one on the wall, to the esports chair as well. It's a team that they can get behind. That community building is 100% accurate. Not to mention, as a teacher, for example, if this is your program, you can set the boundaries or you can set the parameters. Hey, you got to make these good grades, otherwise this team, we really do want to see you with the future. So we wanted to see that before you can participate in a cool environment like this. Plus, you see, at least I personally seen, just attendance skyrocket, just go through the roof, just because students want to be there and compete in the first place. So that's why you've got to check out Spin Labs if you haven't already, through Stay Plus. So that's plus.staypluggedin.com. Get you all the details on that and some of the summer camp programs too that I know you've been incorporating yourself in as well, Justin. So, but that being said, we have a lot of the high schools in here too that actually have Spin Labs. Justin, is that right?
Yeah, we have SMSA up in Connecticut's part of this, and those Carolina region schools also have Spin Labs. And I think that's really what we talked to about Spin Labs. They're really so important to be able to execute things like the curriculum at Stay Plus. And I think it's that kind of connection that really brings it all together, whether that's, running one of our AI courses through the program and going the whole way through, or being able to have a high-powered PC to really work well in DaVinci Resolve, which is what students use for that. Having those kinds of access to tech can really provide an upper hand to students in the space when they're competing. Outside of that, when they're thinking about the real world, it really does work well. And I think SMSA and those Carolina region schools are a great way to talk about it.
Yeah,
it's definitely a difficulty when you don't have that kind of tech. Sorry, Bear, but it's one of those where not every student, as they get into kind of working with any of this, you can say, all right, theory-wise, this is the stuff you could do. You mentioned DaVinci Resolve. You got to have something that actually has a platform for that. So if you don't have that in particular, then you're kind of left, on an island with no ore, and ends up being kind of a rough draw. So seeing that and seeing how the students can actually utilize it is really cool.
Just like you need baseball bats and whatnot for like traditional sports, for example, you need equipment to be able to perform at that level too. So that we could go on and on about Spin Labs and the amount of value it brings, like the home and aways as well from like SMSA, for example. So you mentioned the Carolina region, you mentioned the SMSA up in the New England region. So let's get to know those regions. Monkey Man, we've seen them a lot on the esports side.
We definitely have. A lot of good Green Bay action has come our way, as we've got Green Bay Southwest as well as Bayport High. Some big, actually, in case you guys didn't see the VOD, well, there were some awesome games yesterday, literally throwing us back in our seats. We had no idea what was going on. Houston has been coming up with the Woodlands as well as the Stafford High School side of things. And then with Carolina and New England with Kearns Academy, T. Wingate Andrews, and then Hartford, and then just what we were talking about, SMSA. So everyone coming out of all reaches, well, maybe not all four corners, can't quite reach as far west as maybe some Westerners, maybe in the future, but all these schools have really been putting their best foot forward.
And just like we have high expectations on our end, Monkey Man, as far as like the improvements on the esports side, Justin, you've had that same type of level of expectations on the STEM side. You don't want to see them get complacent. You want to see them grow in this process as well.
Yeah, and I think the expectations that we set worked out really well. I think you all see tonight, I told you guys, I'm a stickler a tiny bit on some of these things, especially when it comes to kind of like those journalistic aspects you're going to see in the real world. Deadlines are still an absolutely huge thing nowadays. To be able to meet those deadlines, hit those deadlines, you're going to see that real world any day of the week. And I have the same expectations for any of the students that we have involved here. And I think that is something that has really pushed and motivated these students to meet these deadlines, because telling them, hey, if you want to be on this stream tonight, we need this Wednesday or Thursday. Like, you got to hit these deadlines if you're going to make it. And then every week, it's as simple as some of these meetings are going in and saying, hey, where are we at? What are we doing today? What are you guys working on? And that continuous in and out kind of process of basically checking in with, at some point, I switched from the educator to the boss. So checking in with your boss, basically seeing where you're at and accomplishing those goals.
In general,
it's kind of like what we do as well.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we get part of a thing called an agile process, and that's to be able to just have quick turnover and very fast processing to be able to get a lot of accomplishments in very set amount of weeks and time. So I like that the kids are kind of getting that. But you need a little bit of boss and teacher at the same time to be able to kind of accomplish this in that grade school level.
That's right. Absolutely. And generally speaking about the STEM program, it's been really cool to see them kind of open their eyes in a way and be like, oh, like this is creating a commercial. That's actually kind of wild. Like you see them every single day, Justin, but to know what's behind the scenes and what it takes to create a commercial is not something that was in the forefront of their brain coming into this program, maybe, but I'm sure it is now at this point in time.
Yeah, no doubt in my mind. This is basically their bread and butter now, I would say. I would say they could probably go around and do it themselves at this point. I mean, even just kind of helping them out throughout the process and being like, hey, let's go back to your storyboard and talk through this again. They quickly are connecting the dots now. So I definitely think if we ran this whole thing again, I bet we could do it in 4 weeks. I bet we could do it in like a half or a third of the time if we really wanted to. I'm pretty confident that all of them have the skills now to go and execute something on their own individually.
Wow, that's really cool.
All right, well, let's showcase the STEM overview and see exactly what they have been working on, because obviously we gave you, it's a commercial from Brightspeed, right? But real-world careers exist in this space, and I'm talking about like that hands-on education you get for these students, especially engaging. When it's 10 weeks long, too, you have to have that strong mentality as well, Monkey, just like we see in esports, if you play match after match after match, you have to keep focused and locked in, but weeks and weeks of learning a new task takes a whole lot of focus, and I've been impressed with the kids overall.
Yeah, honestly, and I like that there's been a systematic and methodical way that it has been given. If you try to give all the instructions all at once and say, all right, read it, do it, it doesn't really work out like that. And I like that this has been piecemealed in such a capacity that has been digestible. And that's such a great way to be able to really incorporate it, especially into young students' minds, to eventually say, all right, this is step one, accomplish this is step two, and then it's a building block cycle. You get those Legos, you get that wall, and you're able to really construct a massive image in real time. And that's been really cool because the career pathways that they're going to be doing is exactly like that. You can be able to build and build and build, especially when you're doing stuff like marketing, entertainment, social media. All of that has really like compounding skills that work together.
Yeah, and then Justin, of course, we talked about those career pathways and how they're built into these programs. But then there's like the engagement, mentorship. They got to learn, like we mentioned in the pre-show here a little bit, they got to hear it from the NFL alumni themselves, which was a really cool experience. I know you got to experience that firsthand.
Yeah, and it's really cool to have that. I'll say for one, I stayed pretty chill throughout the process, but it's very exciting to even, like you all were talking about earlier, get to talk to some of these NFL players, ask them some Q&A questions, kind of run a panel with them, but also talking to colleges, to people who are in the workforce in actual roles, and being able to hear background from them as well as to what areas like content creation can open up to students. Having that industry engagement is so huge, and that is just an absolutely fantastic part of this whole thing, to be able to go in and say, hey, I've had this involvement to be able to talk to these professionals. A lot of the NFL player questions were actually around what their post NFL career looked like. They weren't even all NFL questions. It was about, what are all these players doing after the fact? When were they thinking about what that looked like next? And that's absolutely huge, because when you think about the NFL, it is ultimately a job. And nowadays, people change career fields so often. The NFL is just one of those fields that you're gonna reach an age limit where you're gonna have to stop playing, basically. So being able to talk to NFL players about how do you deal with that transition? How do you deal with switching career fields? I think is really huge for, I would say, our generations, but also this current up and coming generation, because switching job fields is just so common and so freeing, I would say, to a lot of people nowadays. So being able to talk through all these different areas, I think, is absolutely huge. And then leading up to, I know we talked about it earlier, these tickets getting punched to the Green Bay finals, being able to showcase the student talent in person, getting them in possibly in front of some NFL players, getting them in front of Brightspeed too, to be able to actually talk through their commercial. It's a real pitch at the end of the day. Today we can really just show off videos, but to give them an opportunity to actually go in there and talk up their video, I think it'll be really cool to see.
Yeah, that's amazing.
It is, and keep in mind, these are going to be rough drafts too, by the way. And that's such great insight too, because everybody's at the stage of their career, and everybody basically advances over time to some degree, and so the next stage in life is always something you got to consider. And I love that point as well. And it's good to hear that you didn't fangirl too hard either, Director of the Eds, Monkey Man. Probably couldn't say the same. I know you saw a couple of these players and said, "Wow, this is cool."
Yeah, honestly, I got to play a lot of sports when I was in school. I got to see it the same way into college. Didn't exactly play into D1, but I also got to kind of see how this is compounded. Everyone's got heroes, and especially for these guys that definitely stand strong. They know that they're landmarks of community moguls for a lot of where they came from and then who they represent for so many of these towns, these cities that have these teams. And they know that they also represent such like a point of motivation to very young people from just literally from birth, because they'll see like, oh yeah, I'm gonna be a Lions fan, like, oh well, then you're not gonna win a championship for 50 years, but they can be motivated to see them and be able to aspire to be them. I love how granular that these guys have been to really be able to speak to not just the Q&As, but to be like, hey, this is exactly what we want to see out of these students. And like you had mentioned, Bear, and actually you as well, Justin, is that this is gonna be a pitch with the NFL draft happening, as well as with Brightspeed over there. This could be an internship in the making for some of these students as well. They could be seeing some of this as a really like nearby career just to get some of this going.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the big thing about all these connections too, is that, as I mentioned earlier, they're building a portfolio at the end of the day. You know, this is something that they can take to places basically anywhere with how relevant content creation is and how needed it is social media wise in any field, to basically be like, hey, I can do this. Here's proof that I can do this. What can I do to get my foot in the door? And this is one of those easy layup talking points to be like, oh yeah, I got to talk to some NFL players. I got to make a commercial for a big internet company. You know, I really get to do it all out here. So why not have me as an intern? I've got the experience. I've got the skills. You know, put me in, coach.
Why not?
Yeah, sometimes you see something happen in front of you and you're like, oh, well, that's how it's done. You know, I could have been doing this the whole time. Like when I watched Michael Scott put together a one for The Office, the commercial, I was like, oh, I can do this. I can create a commercial myself. But I digress. But it's really cool to see that kind of opportunity. Let's dive into the details, though, as we got to kind of fit a timeline here, too, and look at week by week as far as what the STEM process has looked like for us. So week one started off pretty hot there, Justin, as you want to kind of get things going pretty quickly, but at the same time, you want to set some goals early. You want to make sure that they're in the right place, get some examples going. And like I mentioned just a second ago, you want to see it first before you go and create something. And that's what we got to learn in week one.
Yeah, exactly. You know, it's talking about setting the stage. You know, Brightspeed wasn't sitting in the room there week one, but I came in from, I have my educator hat. I have my hat of being the boss, but I also have my hat of being kind of a Brightspeed Persuado rep and kind of going over, hey, here's the goals that Brightspeed needs to kind of meet. And this is what you need to set out when you see their commercials. So look at these commercials, get some background of kind of what they've done in the past. We can't make a great troll like Ray, but we can do something pretty close to that altogether. So getting them into that area, having them create their first storyboard, and then on top of that, kind of going into how to further make that storyboard, talking about the camera angles, talking about, how many storyboards do we need? How many panels do we need in the storyboard to make that happen? Talk about how does the storytelling work? What do you need to think about when you're telling a good story on camera? And that kind of helps with finalizing that storyboard submission. And then that kind of turned into us talking about that storyboard. We gave that feedback and refinement. We went over the rubrics here when we were together last time, and they were immediately able to start kind of diving into the production side of things. So most of them jumped into filming immediately, starting to get the storyboard footage together using what they learned about camera angles. Some started just practicing video editing. I gave them some raw footage that they could use from a Madden match to be able to start working on those skills, developing those skills, and kind of getting to where they need to be. And from there, it's basically on them. This is where my educator hat kind of switched into my boss role. They're filming, they're working on being able to get involved with the video editing. Once they get the filming done, it's pretty straightforward. Hey, just jump into your video editing. You're ready for it. And throughout all of this, they're going through all these different discussions and panels. We've had esports teams collegiately come from basically every single state that is involved to come in and talk to these students, get involved, tell them what it looks like in the collegiate landscape. And then on top of that, we're also having them meet with people with entrepreneurship and in the NFL and giving them those opportunities to really build out a network that, maybe they go and share these commercials with once they're done here. Maybe they're like, hey, I'm the champion. Maybe I turn around and go and be like, hey, Jonathan Stewart, get me on your podcast. What's it take to get me in there? And those types of things are really the experiences that we're, teeing up for students. And that kind of led into just weeks of filming, refining filming. Dealing with tech issues is obviously a big part of any kind of situation like this. So, it's kind of fighting through the issues, fighting through the adversity. And I think those are honestly some of probably the most important points of this entire thing, is being able to have those students go through adversity, see that this isn't easy peasy. This isn't your regular school assignment. This is a real life skills situation. These are the same issues you're going to encounter in the real world. And I think they did a really good job taking those head on.
I got to see Jonathan Stewart's podcast, by the way, and Radio Row at the Super Bowl event, and it was incredible. So if you didn't watch the highlights of Amon, Grain had this podcast as well, introducing it. It was a really good time there, too, and that's really, really cool to be able to learn it from the best. I mean, we talked about that plenty here during that point in time. But there is a lot that goes into commercials as well. You talked about already, they're ready for the video editing. That's going on behind the scenes to create these rough drafts. But you can't just, settle for the first cut, right? You have to figure out the transitions between these videos. How does the audio transition, what is the music level balanced with talking, in basically voices? There's so much to consider, and all of those details aren't going to come to you in that first iteration, Monkey.
Yeah, no, this is actually very, when we talk about transient skills that are able to kind of go between separate careers, this is so much of what's happening when into an individual project like this is actually something like that what's happening right now where we are on screen. Shout out over right now to Blasky, who is our producer. He's actually part of so much, as well as all producers, whenever we have to kind of present a lot of these streams, and doing the exact same thing, because they take our audio, they are able to position all of the sources, all the video, all the media, and everything that goes into it. So seeing that as well from an individual project standpoint, I got to do a lot of individual study projects, ISPs, that are very relative to this kind of thing that these students are doing right now, Justin. And so seeing how they've had to go through kind of every step of the process, and you mentioned that they had tech issues, and that can be frustrating when you're also then receiving criticism. You gotta fix the thing, and so much of it can be difficult, but still, you guys have been supporting them very well to just kind of learn that entire process from end to end. Were there any major resources that just made that easier, or did you guys just kind of get as nitty gritty as you could with each step until basically everyone can kind of consumed it the right way?
Yeah, I think it really just is those weekly meetings and those weekly conversations that really bring it together ultimately. Consistently being able to talk and communicate with each other was really a big part of it all. Whether I was talking through Discord, talking through email, talking through those video calls, and just being like, hey, what's the issues you're having? What are you seeing? And the educators are a big part of that as well in getting involved. So, whether that's them coming in and saying, hey, students are having this issue, or students are a bit behind here or there, and then kind of troubleshooting where can we resolve that? If a school's a bit behind in video editing, where can I maybe, help out a tiny bit, kind of give some advice, give some pointers, maybe show how something's done that they need to get done so that it's happening and they're actually working toward getting it done, but also still learning the skill at the same time, I think is something that we've had to deal with pretty frequently, I would say, is being like, hey, how do we set it up that I might have some issues getting the music in? Okay, let me show you how to get the music in. You're not going to do it this time around, but I'm showing you how to do it. So even though I'm helping you a bit, you're still learning at the same time. And I think that makes it a bit easier on everyone when you have those situations. And I will tell you, these students, I love you all that are watching, are picky about their footage. A lot of these groups came back to me and said, hey, I don't quite love what I did with my footage the first time around, so I'm redoing a lot of it. And for me, on my end, my heart drops a tiny bit in that moment, because I'm like, are we going to meet our deadline here? Which is why I'm so even more impressed by how well they did at meeting that deadline, despite that process and having to reshoot quite a bit of footage for some of these schools. Because I'll tell you, I saw some of the original footage. I probably wouldn't have harped on it that much. So the fact that they chose to harp on it showed they really cared and were really passionate about getting the filming job right, that they're really passionate about getting the video editing right, very passionate about getting the audio balancing right. They were passionate from beginning to end. And though it gave me a couple heart attacks, they did a great job at the end of the day. They knew better than me to some extent what they were capable of, and that was very impressive.
I mean, it's like writing a paper. Look, whenever I was in school, my English teachers hated me, and it's because they're like, all right, make the template, get your ideas, here's a few bullet points, and then you fill it in, and you have to do like, you know, several drafts. I was the kind of kid, I wanted to write the paper perfectly the first time, and that's it. So I completely understand. You're like, oh, I want to shoot the perfect film, but Bear, it's never perfect the first time.
I needed to learn more on the storyboard side because I was just like dive into like all the details and just like film and then be like, oh, I love this part, this part, this part. You get I get done with the first draft and it's like, the story does not track. Like, we need to go back to the get-go. So, like, every piece is so crucially important for that exact reason, and it's cool that these students are learning that right off the bat and knowing what they need to get back and fix. Love that point. Time for the agenda. Let's talk about what we do here. How do we determine a winner? Who gets to Green Bay? Which high school is going to represent in that side of things? And I couldn't be more excited about it. How do we determine it? Well, one high school will advance from each region to compete live in Green Bay, like we mentioned. Highest total score from the region will advance. And scores will be based on a few different criteria. So, Justin, walk us through the score system and how we determine this.
Yeah, so there's kind of 3 parts to this system, 2 main parts and one kind of tinier section. First off, there is obviously the rough draft. That's going to make up about 60% of the final score. It's worth, on a 500-point scale, it's worth 300 of the 500 points that you can get. And this takes into account a lot of the similar stuff that we've talked about with the storyboards as well, responding to the design debrief, how they kind of use the software, in particular DaVinci Resolve and filming, how they use that software. Did they use it correctly? Design specifications. If you remember with the storyboards, I did assign quite a few different camera angles. I had some specifications in that storyboard, so making sure they executed that in the rough draft, very important. And then as well as that, talking about that creative process, making sure they have everything nailed down on the creative side, make sure they're coming up with unique ideas, and finally what that overall final design looks like. But on top of that, there's a participation score as well. That makes up another 200 points of the grand scheme of things. And that is going to be the other big part. So this was showing up to both STEM and esports. This is participation. This was being able to take in the accounts of the storyboard and raw footage grades that they got as well. So, you know, they might not know that they were being graded on all of that, I'll be honest, but it's an important part of your job. This is your performance review at the end of the day. This is the boss in me coming out. You know, I'm going to sit here and I'm going to evaluate every single facet of these schools. I'm not just here for the rough draft. I'm here to evaluate what these schools did as a group, as a unit, and take that into account throughout the process, because I'll tell you, there can be, like I said, issues, wear and tear, strain throughout the process. But it is about the students, you know, making that strain as minimal as possible and being able to show up on time, being involved on time, submitting all time. All of those are huge parts of being in the real world. And, you know, we make sure to evaluate that here. And only other thing I'll throw in, there's a tiny little Justin support score in there too. Some schools need a bit more help than others.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's just my little credit for those who did it more without me, those who did it more with me. It's only 10 points. Nice. It's small, but I think it's important to note those schools that, you know, needed me more or needed me less throughout the process.
Valid. Absolutely valid. Monkey Man, the system that works for you. I love that it's taken into consideration just about anything, because performance reviews, I was never warned about that, to be honest. Luckily, I'm a workhorse for me, personally. What are your thoughts?
I went through, what was it? So I used to be former military, and we got a performance review every single year, and it was on a 1 to 5 scale, and it was brutal. So same thing happens in the good old contracting world, and they will bring you up, and if you want your merit raise to be a certain percentage, and that's your salary, well, then you better have been really fulfilling some work points, and that also comes down to how much they had to assist you or how much you could work independently. So I actually really appreciate how much of this system is very laid out. There's no mystery, maybe a little bit of the 10-point assist somewhat there, Justin, but the rest of it, it's laid out. You get your job done, you hit your key notes, and you're coming to work. You don't get paid unless you get to the classroom. Come on.
Preach it, Monkey. All right, let's get into today's rough draft. It's time to determine who wins from each region, starting with New England. So, Hartford Public High School, you're up first. No pressure here at all. None taken at all. So, Justin, what we're going to do here first is we're going to discuss the participation score for Hartford Public High School. What you got?
Yeah, so Hartford Public High School got 115 out of 200 for this participation score section.
Okay.
Overall, I will tell you, they started a bit rough. We had some tech issues, but also students had other priorities. I think at the beginning, I think they didn't get what this was going to take to reach at the end of the day. But I think once we got them in the door in that second week, I think it really took off very quickly. I will tell you, out of all of the groups in this second half, they are the ones who have probably put the most work in to get the job done at the end of the day. So I'll say, slow start in the first half, but second half they came out looking like that New England Patriots Falcons Super Bowl where they just completely blew through to be able to get this work done. So they definitely represented the New England region well in that second half.
You had them in the first half, not going to lie.
Wow.
the classic meme there. All right, let's check out the storyboard from last time to see what they're looking to create and put onto paper and then in a video. Justin, refresh our memory, or Monkey, if you remember. Let's go to Justin first.
Yeah. So for this storyboard, you might all remember that this one was very based around just joining the Players League. It basically followed the story of what it was like for them to get asked to join the Players League, them going throughout the process of the Players League, and then them hoping to be the eventual Madden champion. I think their biggest note on the storyboard, though, was that Brightspeed was missing from this. So the biggest feedback was, hey, go back, let's get Brightspeed a bit more involved in your commercial, and, let's go from there. Because if they have Brightspeed in this, and they submit it on time, it's a perfect score. They were very close to a perfect score, just missed the mark by just a tiny bit, but I think they hit the bullseye when it came to the final one, so I'm very excited for it.
Yeah, that was my key criticism last time as well, Bear. They basically just need to put like a Brightspeed cable guy, plugging it in at the in the back wall and going like, hey, and if they include that, boom, it's like perfect.
Yep, 100%. Well, let's no further ado. I love that we get to just jump in and see what they put together for the rough draft. Our first one. I'm excited. Blasky, send it.
Our practice is not playing on Brightspeed internet. Fancy. Quarterback just dumps the ball down a quick underneath completion. Like to do a Madden team? Sure, why not? Hey, cool.
I'm so happy. Madden Star, here I come. Woo!
Hey, how's your work going? It's going good. I just finished this. Now I gotta work on my STEM. If it wasn't for this Brightspeed internet, I wouldn't be able to get it done. STEM work complete. Let's get this Madden practice in. Yeah, dude. I just got a first down on you, bro. I still stopped you. You didn't score a touchdown.
Ultra-fast, Brightspeed fiber internet. Switch to the bright side.
There you go. Initial, Monkey Man, you're making noises right off the bat. I'll go to you first.
Okay, so they kept to the storyline of being able to kind of improve and do the championship. It definitely felt like the inclusion of Brightspeed was more of they're trying to get their STEM homework done, and some of that was kind of going in. It was there, and that they were able to accomplish it to a degree. I think there was a mention of Brightspeed kind of in that transition of like they're happy that they were able to kind of stay connected so they could compete. If I picked up that message, I think the key thing we talked about camera angles was that the audio was a little tough to hear, so some of that was like away from the camera. So that's just about being able to kind of pick up the tech of that. But I think I picked up generally how they kind of shifted that into the old narrative.
You made a good point there. So let's see what to Justin as we go to the rubric and see what you thought. Give us those scores.
Yeah, so let's talk about this from kind of a top-down view. As far as that response to the debrief overall, I will say, first of all, they did make the improvements that were needed to get basically what I would consider be the goal accomplished. Brightspeed actually is mentioned there twice, I believe. Once it's mentioned at the beginning of using Brightspeed to play on the game, and then later on they're saying, thanks to Brightspeed Internet, I'm able to get my STEM work done. I'm able to keep competing as well. So they do have a couple mentions of Brightspeed, but as Monkey Man pointed out, because of just how that audio is set up, they're facing away from the camera a lot, so some of the audio is a bit hard to kind of hear exactly. Even without the music, when I was listening to it before then, it needed a bit more, kind of help to get it there, and that was some of the audio help that I provided as well. They got a support score of 5 out of 10 overall, which is a side note, because I did have to help, kind of edit these clips together, but also kind of help try to save some of that sound so that it was at least hearable on that Brightspeed end. And as far as software knowledge goes, they have a little bit of knowledge throughout the process. I think they kind of understand the filming angles and they understand what they need to do to get good footage with the camera. But overall, like I said, I helped a bit more on the video editing side. We talked about those video editing skills, but I will say that I helped a lot more this group than I might have some of the other groups. So I'm not able to give them a great score on that software side. Outside of that, design specifications, pretty good shape. I think they got most of the design specifications now, but they got some points off because of that vertical look versus the horizontal. And then finally, creative process. I think it's an extremely unique idea to talk about your Players League story. They got a perfect score on that. And overall, final video, like I said, I think it communicates the message about Brightspeed, but as we all noted, audio a bit rough all over the place, but so it lacks some clarity. But overall, I think they did a pretty good job. They finished with a rough draft score of 157 out of 300 and a final score of 277 out of 500. So overall, not too shabby. I think it's a rough draft, so I think there's still more that can be improved. But overall, I think in terms of, that strong second half, I think they did a great job of fishing out that strong job, and having Brightspeed involved is great too.
277 out of 500 will be a score of 55.4% is the point to beat for SMSA. So we'll see if that's enough for Hartford Public High School to advance to Green Bay. So let's bring up SMSA right now. First, Justin, I'll have you talk about their participation score.
So in parallel to Hartford, this is kind of the opposite end of the spectrum. I would say they had a very strong start. They came out the gate swinging, I would say. They had one of the best storyboards, in my opinion, of the bunch as well. Extremely impressive. But I'll say in the second half, it gets tough for some of these students sometimes. These students have a lot of other commitments in their day-to-day. A lot of students throughout Players League are also involved in athletics as well, or other esports teams. So I think in the second half, I think the skills needed for Players League and the amount of involvement Players League takes, I think was starting to catch them a bit in that second half, which resulted in an 89 out of 200 at the end of the day.
There you go. 89 out of 200 score for the participation score. Well, let's bring up the storyboard and see, because you said it was one of the best ones that you've seen out of the group, which is incredible, and I would agree with you. It looks pretty cool, Monkey. What do you think?
Yeah, this one, what was this one overall? What was the message that we were getting? Because I remember this one was very, very wordy for us to kind of absorb last time. What was this one over, Justin?
This one was one of those very simple, like, speaker comes on. Imagine this was you in this tough situation, a teacher struggling to teach with bad internet, and then kind of all the students and the teacher coming together saying, hey, this is how Brightspeed works. This is why it works well. And now our classroom is able to operate because we have the help of Brightspeed fiber internet. So it's one of those very classic, here's your problem, here's the solution, and here's the solution in action kind of scenarios.
Okay, that made a lot more sense, because I remember this one, they had mentioned, oh wow, the connection dropped, this is a little embarrassing, we need to be able to see if we can fix this. That actually tracked a little bit, which, it seems like it would have been a very, kind of easy process to accomplish. We saw that incorporation into the previous side, so SMSA felt like they had kind of set themselves up for success. This should have been kind of a knockout of the park, right?
Yeah. You would think that. Unfortunately, Justin, I think you got some news to share for the stream.
Yeah, so like I said, I am a stickler in this business. At the end of the day, we've had 10 weeks, 11 weeks to make this assignment happen and be able to submit that rough draft. Unfortunately, SMSA does not have a rough draft to give to us today for the grading portion. SMSA, a really strong concept, and a school that I will say I've worked with a couple times before, a very engaged school. Unfortunately, like I said, schedules get really busy. Students have a lot of commitments in their day-to-day, especially high schoolers, whether that's, working a part-time job already, whether that's taking care of siblings, whether that's being involved in other teams and having other commitments. Players League is absolutely something great, but at the end of the day, I always tell students, if you have something that you think you're passionate about and completely believe in, it's great if you can be a part of our program. But if there is something that you need to dedicate yourself and make a priority, whether that is academics, after school, family, work, beyond, I expect students to honor that commitment. So I'm not a stickler for them to be able to, not get the job done. Like I said, SMSA, great group of students, great school, great educator over there. Just wasn't able to get it in this time.
Rough.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? Hey, that does actually wait. That means we have a winner. Straight up, Holt Bear. Who we got?
We got Hartford Public High School will be joining us for this reason. And again, hitting deadlines is what you want to do. Putting in that effort, putting the work, and being able to submit it on time. Important. So Hartford Public High School from the New England region will be making their way to Green Bay. Congratulations to that group as they were able to fight through and do enough in that first half. In the second half to power through. That's why you never give up, right? That never give up attitude really helped them here, Justin.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I will tell you, Hartford, another school we've worked with a lot in the past, and a school that we'll continue to work with many, many times in the future, it looks like. So excited to give them this opportunity, honestly. I know their educators well. I've gotten to know their students well over these weeks. It is a very deserving school. Don't cut their credit just because SMSA didn't turn one in. This is a school that, could be a fireball down the stretch here.
There you go. Let's send it to the Houston region now. Let's shift our focus to the southwest side, where we start with Woodlands High School. To kick things up, we'll get to Stafford in a little bit. That's their opponents here in the Houston region. So Woodlands, as is tradition, Justin, start us off with the participation score and how you landed with it.
Yeah, so Woodlands, 181 out of 200. An impressive one. That's
Nice.
basically a 90% on that participation score. They were super involved throughout the process, honestly. This school really wanted to compete, really wanted to be involved. I'll tell you, when this league started, this is a little side story, they went out and actually got some more consoles for their school, specifically for this league. Because of the fact that, some of their students want to play from home, but some students might not have had the equipment at home. So, Woodlands turned around and went out and got that equipment. This is a school that is dedicated to the cause, and their participation really shows that here with that score, I think.
That's fantastic to hear. I love that. Well, let's hit the storyboard. Justin, refresh our memories as far as what they're looking to create.
Yeah, so this is actually vaguely similar to SMSA, where basically you see two people competing in their competition for Madden, and then eventually you see there ends up being a bit of an internet issue. And you panel over to the Brightspeed rep. Imagine Brian in his little bow tie and glasses being like, has this ever happened to you? And then ultimately being able to show, hey, here's what Brightspeed is, here's what it does. This can help you avoid lagging out in your Madden matches. So very similar to SMSA, but once again, a very good traditional commercial concept across the board, and really highlights what Brightspeed is really here for with Brightspeed Fiber Internet, making reliable Madden matches even more reliable.
I remember this one from last time, and the thing I was looking forward to the most was the bow tie. I want to know if they put someone in a bow tie and who got to play the rep, or if they got an actual rep to be able to help out with this one. I'm actually pretty excited to see this one.
Yeah, see if they have some hair too. There's only one way to find out. That's by rolling the tape. Let's check it out.
Sends this away. Here's Smith on the return.
Have you ever been in a championship game, lining up for the game-winning field goal, and your internet goes out? With the championship game on the line, don't let this happen to you. This is why you should choose Brightspeed Internet. Brightspeed offers consistently reliable fiber internet speeds, ensuring smooth gameplay. Choose high-speed, ultra-fast, Brightspeed Internet if you want to win championships.
Ultra-fast, Brightspeed fiber internet. Switch to the bright side.
No bow tie, but I think the music made up for it. I wanted the salsa monkey.
I did too. I am actually take a point off for no bow tie. How could they? They drew it 3 or 4 times in the storyboard. But you know what? That was awesome. We got to see all the transitions. You actually had a really nice even cadence. We talked about the music before, kind of covering up some of the audio, and they definitely brought it forward. But you know, some students, they don't want to exactly have their face on camera, but the good acting for what you got to see really translated from storyboard to the 2 players to the issue being there. And I like that they actually used the extra effects in DaVinci Resolve to highlight, you know, it's hard to kind of force simulate lag. So they're like, oh no, it turned red, it's shaking, it's bad. That was fantastic work to really get that message across.
I was gonna point out the transitions as well. Like they challenged themselves and looked to use it potentially. So Justin, without further ado, let's hear your opinions of it.
Yeah, so Monkey Man might want to give them a 0 based off of the lack of bow tie, but we'll give them the benefit of the doubt for this one. There was no bow tie in the rubric, so I can't take off points for that. But overall, they did get a 257 out of 300, a very strong score in my opinion. And they did most of this on their own. They had a Justin support score of 9 out of 10. The only thing I helped with was a bit on the music side, but outside of that, they were absolutely fantastic across the board. The response to the design debrief was 100% clean. I feel like they answered and went above and beyond. Their software knowledge was fantastic. They cut and edited very well. And I think they also, what they did a really good job was, that impressed me about this group, was they used actual Madden gameplay footage actually from the in-game footage, not just showing it on a screen while someone's playing it. They actually went in, played out a Madden match that would fit well into the commercial, and keeping that story was absolutely fantastic. On top of that, design specifications across the board, they did everything they needed to do, whether that was, you know, they did the pan on the camera angle, switching from the gamer to switching to the Brightspeed rep. They were able to get those different, you know, close-ups, those far away shots, kind of the landscape shots. They really did all in the shot area. The only place that I really took off anything was kind of on the creative process. Like I said, this feels a very traditional kind of commercial format, which I can't fault them for entirely, which is the simple, hey, here's someone doing something. Now there's an issue. Here's the person talking about how to solve that issue. Here's the issue being solved. You know, very simple, straightforward. Oh, my game lagged out. You know, here's the correction. So creative process, you know, I think they played it safe, but I think the safeness paid off for them in this scenario. Across the board, you know, expert level and everything except that creativity. You know, a 257 out of 300 is no laughing matter there. And an overall score of 447 out of 500 is, you know, higher than either of the New England schools already. They're definitely a force to be reckoned with here for the Houston region.
89.4% there. Monkey, did you have final thoughts?
I mean, I'd actually wondered, because I'd seen that, what was it? It was developing. I think that's the column category that ended up being the mark into the creative process. Did any of that actually come into kind of the feedback or criticism for that rubric when you're comparing against other schools that have done the same thing? You say it's kind of more traditional, like a safe position. So were you, when you're grading it, are you looking across what the other schools and teams had done? Is that more of like just kind of overall, all right, this seems like it's been there, done that? How did that particular score actually come down or go up, whichever, meet in the middle for that grade?
Yeah, so that's a really great question. So as far as that goes, I kind of think more of the generic overall of what the landscape of commercials look like in general. You know, I think there is a very traditional commercial format, and I think they followed that very well. You know, I don't think they did anything out there that extremely made me go like, wow, that is like a crazy thing to do, outside of, like I said, that Madden footage was very impressive to have that actually in the commercial. But overall, you know, when you look at these rubrics, you kind of have those different categories. And I kind of split them into 2 groups. 2 of those, which are the design specifications as well as the software knowledge, kind of fit more into what I would call an academic side of things. They're way more technical. They're way more of like, in a traditional classroom, you'd be graded more so on that. But as far as responding to design debrief, creative process, and that final design, I think those are way more of a full-on, like, make a commercial type grade. They go beyond just what the academic is. It's more about, you know, if I was a company or I was the boss, that's more my boss grading perspective than just my educator grading perspective. So
gotcha.
Both take a role in it. And I think they did a amazing, basically perfect job on the academic side. And I think they did a really good job from my boss perspective too. You know, I would just look at that and I would say, you know, I could probably ask 100 people on Family Feud this question, and I'd probably get at least 20 probably come up with that answer.
That's fair. That's 100% valid. Great breakdown and a great score. Like we mentioned, 89.4%. Tough to beat. So let's get to Stafford High School within the same Houston region and see if they can't beat that one-up Woodlands. And we start with their participation score, Justin.
Yeah, and as far as their participation goes, they ended up with a 101 out of 200. So they were a bit all over the place at times. I think something that's very important to note about Stafford High School, we have a pretty good relationship with them over here at Stay Plugged In as a whole, in that they are very heavily involved in esports. They have a very large esports program, a lot of esports students involved, and a lot of busy games going on. That they have an esports lab that is filled every day of the week, basically. So, they're competing with that space for being able to host Players League, being able to host their Madden matches that they regularly have in the leagues they're competing in, being able to compete in all of their other esports as well. And it's an absolutely fantastic program, but I think because of that, it's sometimes hard to have, everyone in the right place at the right time to bring it together. So their participation fell a bit short, but overall, I thought their storyboard was pretty interesting.
Yeah, so let's check it out. We'll bring up the storyboard as a refresher here. It was the AI-generated one, which is pretty cool. Monkey, I hear your reaction already off the bat. This one's going to be tough to kind of put together, but it was a cool concept.
Yeah, I did like that there was, they utilized what AI can be helpful for. If you don't have someone that immediately has maybe the ability to kind of put forth some art skills, but you have like a grandiose idea. And I think everyone on this panel can agree that is pretty grandiose. You have a lot. You're like, all right, throw this in like a Roman legionnaire arena. Bring out the football, the mercenary. He's going to be fighting in front of the emperor. All this other kind of stuff. It's kind of crazy. But it also was very over the top, straight off the rip. You kind of, the storyboard feels like it's supposed to set kind of the baseline, the foundation, not the final product right out the gate.
Justin, your thoughts on the storyboard here?
Yeah, I think it's a pretty good storyboard. Like I said, there's really only 4 true panels on here. So that was kind of the main issue last time around. I have no issue with them using AI. I think it was a great source of resourcefulness. I know some of the other stuff we do here at Stay Plugged In, like I said, is based around AI. So I can't argue with, what I teach. So for that, I think it's absolutely a fantastic storyboard idea. But the question overall is, it's a lot to execute. You're not going to build a Roman Colosseum, I don't think. So the question is, how do you make that right?
You travel to the Coliseum. Just kidding.
They go to Rome.
Logistically speaking, that's probably a bit expensive. And so, Justin, what's the verdict as far as the video goes?
Yeah, so as far as this video goes, like I said, very busy esports team. No submission on the STEM side today for Stafford either. We talked up with the coach till the last second, but, a lot of these students, like I said, they're involved in esports, they're involved in other after-school activities, and I can understand sometimes that has to take priority. It ultimately sucks that they weren't able to come in here with an actual, rough draft, because I think the storyboard would have been very interesting, exciting to play on. I know Monkey Man was really hoping to see this one play out and see what they come up with. Honestly, if they qualified, I think Monkey Man should have flown them to Rome. But unfortunately, this storyboard in particular might have flown a bit too close to the sun, and ultimately weren't able to get a rough draft out of them.
I was planning to, but I guess them not submitting a video, gosh, not going to be sending anyone to Italy. But I guess that means that we also just have an automatic winner, Bear. So who's going?
Yeah, unfortunately, we can't send Stafford to Green Bay either, but we can send Woodlands High School. Congratulations. Well earned, right? It's not like this was just automatic because of the lack of submission on the other side. I mean, they put together a pristine product in my eyes. I thought it was very well done. Even though it was conservative, they were able to execute on it. So tale of two different tapes here, in my opinion. As Woodlands, again, great job on the Houston region to be able to advance forward. Next region we go. We're ripping through these. This time it's Carolina region, where we go to T. Wingate Andrews first. So T. Wingate Andrews, again, we have to kind of bring up their participation here score-wise. So Justin, where are we at with that?
Yes, overall, a 158 out of 200. Overall, really good. Basically, all of these students are involved on athletic teams, but week in and week out, if they weren't going to make it, they let us know in advance. And when that happened, they really rescheduled quite a few of those as well. It was very clear like that they wanted to be there ultimately, and that even when something got in the way, they found ways to work around it and persevere. And I think their score shows that. You miss a couple here or there, but if you're rescheduling and trying to make up that time and getting back in the classroom to make it happen, that 158 out of 200 is, I think, extremely fair.
Great scoreline. Great scoreline. We saw them on the Madden side a few times. So I love to see that participation coming through. Be able to at least set them up for success. But let's refresh our memories here, Justin, with the storyboard. Which story were we looking at here?
Yeah, so this storyboard was ultimately just jumping into a portal to bring people together. You have these individual players playing separately. This kind of portal appears that brings the players together. And ultimately, it's about internet bringing people together and bringing them basically into the same room together, not physically, but in this commercial they'll show it in a physical way to be able to do so. But very straightforward storyboard. Last time, the only thing I think they got off for was that it cut off the bottom there, which kind of covered what was being covered in each of the individual panels. But overall, not much sacrifice there on the storyboard. Was an overall very good idea.
Yeah, that in particular, I think I mentioned last time, it looks like something that you could pitch to be like one of those 15-second ads, and maybe even in longer, because some of the other ones that we've seen before, from the storyboards and then onward to their execution, has a longer narrative to try and execute, and this one is like symbolically simple, which is when you're trying to get as many ads as possible, especially be it for Brightspeed or otherwise, is kind of a boon, and it also takes away the price of having to run them, especially if you're doing it during the Super Bowl. So this one looked like it would have been really cool from an artistic standpoint to execute.
Yeah, let's see if they were able to execute on that, because I'm interested to see if they did summon Project Starlink here, or whatever it might be, in order to get that portal cooking. Only one way to find out. Roll the tape.
Ultra-fast, Brightspeed fiber internet. Switch to the bright side.
Monkey, quick fire, just like you said. Your thoughts?
It was as quick as I thought it might be. Didn't expect them to do a shout out for themselves. That's actually kind of a neat backsplash that came through, and they changed it up. I didn't know how they would execute, and I thought maybe there would be more graphical to it, but timeline wise, that Justin has been kind of spinning to us, that actually was really clever, and I found myself laughing because I was like, oh, they're here, oh, they're there, whoop, and then they're just suddenly together. I was like, I don't know, Brightspeed paid for their ticket to come over to the room, but sure, that's cool. That's a neat way to do it.
Justin, scorecard and your initial reactions both all together. Let's hear it.
Yeah, I didn't make a budget for them to fly across the world to each other, so, we can say movie magic is how that one happened. So, overall, though, very solid scores across the board. They had a overall of 241 out of 300. Their response to the debrief was skilled. It was very good. I had no real complaints about their creative process or design specifications. They had everything included they needed to have. They did a great job with the creativity. Software knowledge was a bit lacking, and you kind of see that as well in that Justin support score of 5 out of 10. I did have to help with the video editing on the back end of this one to help make sure that the job was done at the end of the day. They do know quite a bit of these skills, but I think they could have probably used maybe one more week without my help to really get it right and really raise that software knowledge. But we have to take what we have in this situation. But overall, final design, really good. Honestly skilled. I thought they had a really good score across the board, and I think that 241 out of 300 on the rough draft made a lot of sense, and a 404 out of 500 as their overall score. It's definitely a no-joke commercial, and I think, honestly, if you give them a couple more weeks, I think it'll be even better.
Yeah, definitely didn't feel like they were scraping by any means, so that'll be a score of 80.8%. Monkey Man, what's your thoughts? You think this score can hold on?
Well, 404. Hopefully, this team is not found. We get to see if that does hold up. Look, at this point, I'm just waiting for the first region that's going to have 2 videos to collide. This is actually a really solid score. A B is a B, and B's get degrees. So we'll get to see how this one goes up against Kern's Academy.
Well, if they can open that Stargate, they can take themselves to Green Bay, I guess. Well, we've got another school, obviously in the Carolina region, going up against them. It's Kern's Academy's turn. So without further ado, Justin, you know the drill already. What you got for the participation skills?
Yeah, I mean, on the Kearns side, so Kearns was very involved and really engaged. Overall, their participation score was a 171 out of 200.
Nice.
I'm glad they participated heavily throughout the process here because they were one of the groups that had to be on a separate day just because of how their schedule worked out. But week in and week out, they were always there. So I was never left in a room by myself, thankfully, because trust me, you don't want to be teaching to yourself, guys. It's not a fun time. But overall, super great score on the participation side. They were very involved, very engaged. I know people here in the broadcast have had a chance to have some of the Kearns members on. I know Kingston's been on and given interviews as well in the past. And I know we saw Kingston earlier this evening in that earlier talking about the Players League overview. So overall, very involved and engaged school.
Is that King Mode, by the way?
Yeah, that is King Mode right there. Yeah.
So he is
100%.
involved beating you?
Honestly, actually, I'm changing the participation score. We're actually going to change that to a 71. And we can reevaluate after that. Everyone just remember that if you want to win STEM, you should throw against your educators. This is a good lesson for everyone involved.
Justin's support score is dropping, Monkey.
Paid actor, come on, gotta take your licks. I've seen plenty of PE teachers have to realize that the kids were faster in races. Come on, you gotta. But no, that's really cool that they were that participatory. I need a refresher for their storyboard. I want to see this.
Yeah, so as far as their storyboard goes, you may remember this one. This is the several scenarios of having trouble with tech. Whether that's them basically having trouble with the computer or having trouble with their phones. We talked about a thrown phone out a window. Does that come to reality today? Are we actually going to see someone throw, maybe it's a new iPhone out the window? Who knows? I think that'd be some really exciting budget. But overall, really cool idea, really cool concept. I love the multiple different issues that they have involved going into this storyboard.
Will they throw their... Oh, go ahead. No, you first. You first.
Honestly, it felt like it was a really neat concept because the way they did their storyboard, it could or could not have to incorporate human actors into it. You literally could just see a window, have the pane, like just basically looking at it, and then chucking that thing straight out, and no one would be seen. I am curious how this one will play out.
Well, if any phones were thrown out the window, that's quite pricey. But there's only one way to find out. Find out after this quick. I'm just kidding. After this quick video, roll it, Blasky. What we got?
Not working. It's not working. No! The Wi-Fi over here is horrible. Ah!
That's why I use Brightspeed.
Ultra-fast, Brightspeed fiber internet. Switch to the bright side.
So hopefully that was one of those hand-me-down phones ain't nobody using. The controller, I wonder if they kept that. I don't know if they meant for that controller to actually hit the ground. That was good.
I was thinking the same thing too, and that phone was certainly not a Motorola, was it?
Oh no, it was not.
No, I gotta say, I wish it was a real phone. Honestly, I think I would have given a perfect score if it was a real phone. Someone sacrifices their phone for the bit. That's what I really want to see. I want to see the full commitment. But I love seeing a phone break in half anyway. Who doesn't love that?
If it was King Mode's phone, bonus points from Justin. I'm just kidding. Totally kidding, joking. Let's get to the scoreboard. I've spoken too much. Justin, what you got here for this one?
Ooh.
Yeah, so no broken controllers, unfortunately, especially not King Modes, and I don't think I'll have any broken heart about this score either. Absolutely fantastic score here, a 283 out of 300 on this rough draft. A perfect design debrief, I think. I think they fill everything out that they need to. wholly for Brightspeed. I think the software knowledge is absolutely fantastic. Their editing's great, design specifications, they fulfill absolutely everything. Those are, 3 perfect 60s on those 3 categories. And they didn't need a lot of support from me. I help a bit with the audio, but not a lot other than that. Overall creativity, I did deduct a tiny bit here. This is similar to kind of what I did with Woodlands, where it was like, problem, solve problem, all of that stuff. But I think I like this one a bit more because it shows multiple different types of issues. It runs through a variety of different people having different problems, and how it brings it all together at the end with them kind of at the window being like, let me in to your strong Brightspeed fiber internet. I gotta have it. I think that gave a bit more points on that creativity side than what Woodlands had. And overall, that final product, that video I could possibly, hand off to Brightspeed today and say I'm a happy camper with. But I'll tell you, Kearns is one of those groups that works really hard and reiterates, and I think they're gonna, keep refining this work. But overall, a 463 out of 500.
Oh,
Wow.
and you know what that means? 92.6%, Monkey.
Wow, that's the highest score tonight. Wait, what? That means they got, oh my gosh, we know.
Punch the ticket. It is Kearns Academy, joined from the Carolina region. Congratulations. You will meet us in Green Bay, and we'll see your final version of the video from that Carolina region. Congratulations to Kearns Academy.
Wow, that, you know what had me absolutely falling, like, look, it was the shock and awe campaign they put through that, and I did like it. Some of them were a little bit different from their storyboard, but they made great use of camera work and camera angles, because when you had the final scene of those guys tapping on glass, they had a straight line shot focusing on the next guy, and you thought, okay, he's gonna bring something else as well. And I didn't even realize that was a window pane, because it went bam, and then they were able to swing, see that. That was really good execution. Love that they got that, and they very much earned a spot in Green Bay.
Yeah, and it was great across the board. And who doesn't love seeing King Mode in that little boss chair at the end of the day? Maybe he has Brightspeed Fiber Internet. Maybe that's why King Mode ended up ultimately beating me, was that Brightspeed Fiber Internet maybe on their end. So shout out to him. Shout out to the match we played again. I'm very excited for them to have a shot to go to Green Bay. Congrats again.
Great thing. Speaking of Green Bay, that's the last region we've got here tonight. Excited for this one, boys. Green Bay region has been very active on the esports side, and I think it's been able to transition to the STEM side, at least what we saw from the storyboards. So let's start with Southwest Green Bay High School first, and check out the participation score verbally by your man, Justin.
Yeah, this feels like, as we've gone through these different regions, if this was a UFC fight, this is the name match of the evening. This is the title card match. It all comes down to who's gonna get to travel about 30 minutes to the finals here in Green Bay for the NFL draft. And participation score, Southwest 179 out of 200. Engaged throughout the process, involved throughout the process.
Nice.
I don't know if there's a time I didn't see their coach and students on a given week. They were always involved and engaged throughout the process. I think the only points they have deductions for they lost a few points on that storyboard we're going to look at. They lost a few points on the raw footage. But outside of that, their participation was immaculate across the board.
Oh, so let's check out that story, because you'll have to refresh my memory. What story was this one? It's starting to come back to me a little bit.
Yeah, so this is one that looked like it was going to involve some athleticism here. Looks like somebody's kind of getting into a game of Madden, and then this kind of teleports into the game, and the students are then the players in the game, throwing the ball, and then bad internet causes an incomplete pass, and then Brightspeed comes in, saves the day, better internet, better pass, better catch, better touchdown. Brightspeed's got it there. 6 points on the board.
That is definitely, I feel like this one's going to be one of the most difficult to execute, because like you mentioned, this is going to be some sincere shots if they decide not to do it from like just Madden, I guess, gameplay, and they're doing it themselves. There can be some really creative kind of moments that they can capture that from, and I want to see how they actually execute that, because they had that meter on the football. I want to see how that works.
Yeah, you had it feels like kind of like Free Guy where they jump into the video game, or like Tron, like if you're an old head like me, right? Just being able to jump into the game and be part of that too is such a creative concept. So I imagine if they can pull it off, that it would be that score. But first, let's go ahead and roll. We had a little bit of raw footage that we want to check out here. In the meantime, we can kind of talk over here. This is the stuff that they plan to, Justin, add to their video.
Yeah, so they knew this was a rough draft and wanted to make sure it was known what they saw of the film. So they wanted to submit what they had so far. So they went through, kind of was like, here, we got this wide shot of our school. We're going through this 15-second long clip of what the beginning's going to look at. And then it kind of goes into, hey, here's some of the actual footage we were able to get. They show a great tri-frame. They're showing the athleticism here that I was talking about earlier. And an incomplete pass. And then ultimately are coming back into it. You see basically the raw footage showing the completed pass now. And this is ultimately highlighting what Brightspeed is all about. And I think they want to have their own Brightspeed rep.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, that's going to be an awesome one for sure. So without further ado.
Ultra-fast Brightspeed fiber internet. Switch to the bright side.
I wonder how many takes it took before they actually got that one student to catch the ball. Because even on the good connection, if I'm like, trying to go get it. That one was definitely neat. I like the I like that first off, the dude did the realest thing ever and missed the keyhole twice and trying to be able to get that into the door. But that was really nice. I like the software. I like the editing that they put into it. And there was like I think the one message that maybe just the slightest less clear was they're like, okay, Brightspeed was the ball, right? And that's why they connected, because I feel like it was kind of like it was presented unspoken. Some of that, maybe the slightest translation kind of backwards, but otherwise that was really, really good.
All right, Justin, let's hear your thoughts on this video. What you got?
Yeah, overall, it's a pretty solid video across the board, and it's really cool to see what they still have planned. You know, it shows that this is a rough draft, and they're going to take the next 2 weeks pretty seriously to really hammer it out, hopefully, if they do qualify for this Green Bay finale. But overall, skilled across the board, mostly 49s. And then, you know, perfect on the software knowledge. They seem to know how to do their video editing well. They added everything in well. They have great plans for what their video editing looks like going forward. It ultimately led to a 255 out of 300. I did do a bit of effects work and sound to help with this one, so they got a 7 out of 10 on the Justin score. But overall, you know, a 255, 7 on the Justin score, 179 participation. It's a 441 out of 500. It's a very solid competitive score.
Yeah, that's the first highest tonight monkey, or second highest tonight monkey? Is that right?
I think it's the second or third highest. It definitely is right up there. So I think it's definitely the second highest, because the first highest was Kern's Academy, and they were insane with what they did. I also forgot to mention the idea to go. I was like, all right, is this just gonna be two regular dudes just kind of playing football? They did the VR translation of we're in the game. That actually was a really neat concept to apply into this.
Yeah, good points all around. Okay, that's a tough score to beat. We've seen all night that's going to be right up there with the best. So that means that Bayport High School has got to be pretty good and beat that 88.2% that Green Bay Southwest was able to, or Southwest Green Bay was able to put together. So Bayport High School, our final high school of the night in this Green Bay Battle of Titans. Justin, give us the participation score.
And they're going to start with some heat to get this battle started. A 197 out of 200 on the participation score.
Wow.
The highest participation score out of any school. Week in, week out, their educator was there. Their students were there. It was always an expectation that Bayport was going to be there. And, you know, on their spring break when they weren't there, it felt quiet without them. You could feel the impact of them. Even in a little call and virtual call with everyone there, you felt the impact of Bayport's presence every time you were there. And their participation score shows that.
Wow. Monkey, top level. 100
Yeah.
and dude, 197 out of 200. You in Justin's scoring system, that's actually insanely impressive. And you have to have a good, storyline at that point if you're participating well. And that's what we saw last time around. But just as a refresher, Justin, what we have for the storyline here.
Yeah, so overall, their storyboard kind of had these, farmers hanging out. One's getting upset because their internet isn't working. And then, they're getting upset. Someone's kind of stealing the show from them and making their internet worse. And then Brightspeed comes in, saves the farmer's day, saves their internet, and now they can connect to everyone. So overall was, I'm pretty sure a perfect score on their rubric. The question was, what does this farmer attire possibly look like? What are they going to look like when they actually bring this to life?
The evil overalls. I want to know how that happens. Yeah, if they're using actual signs, or if they had maybe a mom or two maybe help themselves out. This will be kind of neat. This one definitely is gonna have a wardrobe change or two for us.
Man, oh man, this is definitely a good one for sure. Let's just go and roll right into it. I'm so excited to see both of these Green Bay submissions here. So let's check out what Bayport High School put together.
Through the smokes and my shadows. That's gonna disappear. Oh, I know. She's coming. CT.
I charge you an excruciating amount of money for the worst internet possible, so I make the most amount of money. What happened? I forgot about Brightspeed.
Wow, I don't lag anymore.
Thanks, Dad! Now I can play my Fortnite games, and I can get my Rickroys!
With plans starting as little as $29.99 a month, you can experience high-speed fiber internet. Switch to the bright side today.
It's good, right? Everyone liked that, right?
Why was Bane the thing at the end? I like the evil. Okay, I didn't know what to expect. The evil guy is like, I'm gonna charge everyone. Then they hired I was raised in the darkness. Where did he come out of nowhere? I need an explanation. It was good, but what did that person say in the high-pitched voice too? What happened?
Oh, it was Fortnite. Now they can play their Fortnite games
Vic
again.
Roys.
Yeah.
Have you never got a Vic Roy?
I've never got a Vic Roy.
It
on
shows.
me. My
it
bad.
shows, apparently.
It does.
Justin, can you expand on this, both in that sense and the scoreboard for us, please?
Yeah, so let's talk about this commercial the whole way through to get started. So basically, it's someone with trouble with internet. There's this evil mogul man in his top hat, and ultimately it's Brightspeed comes in and saves the day, and it does get a bit confusing at the end. That masked man is actually the Brightspeed rep saving the day.
What?
So I would say that's Brian from Brightspeed right there, if I've ever seen it. Brian from Brightspeed in his Bane mask comes in to save the day. Like I said, it's a bit confusing there. I'd love to see them do some voiceover with some more clarity. That was their lowest part in the final design. They got a 25 out of 60 on the final design just because of that lack of clarity. But overall, their score was a lot higher because of that. They got perfect on the design debrief. I feel like they did a great job representing Brightspeed throughout the process. Software knowledge was top notch, great editing, design specifications. They had all the design specifications. The only one that got them some lost points was the one when the Brightspeed comes in the middle, when they come in and kind of change the pace of the commercial. Some of that finds itself off frame. So I'd love for them to edit that to get it back on frame. Creativity, I think you all will agree. This was a pretty creative one. So they got pretty good score on the creativity. Like I said, if it was a bit more clarity, it probably would have been perfect on the creative. And they didn't need much help. So they got a 9 and 10 on the Justin support. They got a 232 out of 300 on the rough draft score. And overall, that is going to come out to a total of 438 over 500 for this one.
Oh, it came up just short from the 441, just as a reminder. They're from Green Bay, Southwest Green Bay High School. So we have ourselves a winner of the Green Bay region. Congratulations, Green Bay Southwest High School, for edging out the competition of Bayport High School, and they will be at the finals from the Green Bay region. Congratulations on that, but that was dead close there, Justin.
Yeah, I mean, that's the closest it could ever possibly be, and I don't want the Bayport people to leave the stream just yet if they're watching, because this has been fantastic. You deserve credit for what that commercial was. I think we can all say that rough draft was absolutely fantastic. And with that being said, I mean, what do you think about all this? Do you think, what can we do to help them out a bit?
I think they're close by. I think they put in the work, the time, the effort. You said they're showing up on a regular basis. So if you're there from Bayport High School, congratulations. That's right. We're going to send you to the finals as well for a total of 5 schools. Green Bay, everybody is going to be involved in this one. Bayport High School also advancing to the finals too. It's so hard to pick between those two. And listen, both of them did a justified, insane job at what they were able to do. Love to be able to say you all are making it to Green Bay, 15 minutes down the road from where you are to Lambeau Field in order to join us here for the finals.
You know what? It just goes to show, for all the work and all the kind of the extra efforts that have been put in by these awesome students, and you gave them 197 out of 200. That goes to show that you show up, you do the work, and you put in sincere effort to a project. And no matter where it currently stands, as you try to strive for that final project or just kind of overall product to come to life, that everyone will be able to see that. And so, love that they're being able to be given that extra chance. That means we've got 5 teams that'll be up there as well there, Bear. And I need someone for that final draft from Bayport. They just need to make it more obvious who the heck Bane is, because I was like, is this villain number 2? So if they fix that, then that's going to be a top competitor as well across this field.
It's the bane of existence for Hill Monkey, man. That's who it is right now. Well, congratulations again to all of our winners. You mentioned 5 of them. From the New England region, it's Hartford Public High School. From Houston, Woodlands High School. From Carolina's Kearns Academy joining us. From Green Bay, both of the schools, Southwest Green Bay High School and Bayport High School. Those 5 will be represented live at Lambeau Field. It's going to be incredible. So, if for that reason, you don't want to miss the final Week of Players League esports competition presented by Brightspeed Fiber Internet. Tune in next week as the season wraps up and the playoff picture is finalized. And mark your calendars for April 25th and 26th as we go live from Green Bay, Wisconsin at the NFL Draft to crown the official Players League champions in both STEM and esports, by the way. It all comes down to this. One school and region will take on the title. Don't miss a moment when they make history. We'll see you all next week. Thank you all for joining us. We'll take care. Good night.